We will be finishing chapter 34, so we're looking at about 18 verses. So buckle up. Here we go. Okay. Um, Last week we started out with verses 1 through 12, and just kind of as a recap, remember it's this little girl of about between 9 and 12 named Dinah. She was violently raped by a young man between somewhere like 16 and 20, the son of the prince Hamor. His name is Shechem. Does this violent thing, keeps the little girl basically hostage and tries to negotiate for her to be sold to him in marriage, and that's kind of where we left off. So now we're hitting part 2. So Genesis 34, verses 13 through 31. And if you're taking notes, the title is Dinah's Brothers. Dinah's Brothers. Verse 13. Jacob's sons answered Shechem and Hamor, his father, deceitfully, because Shechem had defiled and disgraced their sister Dinah. So let's be clear about this, okay? And I just want to, preface it in this way. I've read multiple commentaries on this. Again, a difficult chapter, whether it's through the commentators or whatever else. People have very strong opinions about what was going on here. But what we know is what the Word of God clearly says. And what it says is that these young men answered deceitfully. In other words, what they were doing is they were intentionally misleading Shechem and Hamor. That they simply stated, these guys lied to them. Okay? Let's be clear. We can make it sound like, oh, it was a little white lie. It was a lie. They lied to them. Okay? Let's be clear about that. I'm not going to say that lying is ever right, because it's not. Okay? But we see here what they did. These young men lied to Shechem and Hamor. All right? But then it also goes on in this verse to tell us the reason why they decided to speak to them deceitfully. Okay? The reason for their deception is that Shechem had violently raped, he had defiled and disgraced their little sister Dinah. So that's, this is the reason we're doing this. He defiled our little sister. Now that word defile means that through this rape, Shechem had made her morally and spiritually unfit or impure. That's how they would look at it. And to say that she was disgraced the same way because of the rape, because Shechem did this, and this is important, the way it's worded. Also, because of the Hivites, they're Canaanites, because of their condoning of these practices, okay, because they were okay with what was going on. This was not just the prince and his son who were warped and twisted doing these things. This was the way these people functioned. So because of that, this had brought shame and reproach and dishonor upon Dinah. And as we're soon going to see, it's also going to bring the judgment of God down upon them. Okay? Now, again, I want to be very clear with this, and that's that this little girl, Dinah, she did nothing, absolutely nothing to bring this upon herself. She was a victim. Yeah. Now, Dinah's brothers, they understood that what was done to their little sister by Shechem and was approved by their people, by the Canaanites, that was an abomination in the eyes of God. They were clear on that. Remember, the dad, Jacob, had just said he just waited until they got home. And I'm sure he was thinking and praying and waiting, but they waited. But here, they understood, look, what they did, what these Canaanites did to our little sister, that was an abomination in the eyes of God. This is not okay. We cannot let this stand. Okay? Verses 14 through 17, it says, they said to them, the brothers, we cannot do this thing and give our sister in marriage, okay, to someone who is not circumcised, because that would be a disgrace to us. But we will consent to you only on this condition: if you will become like us, in that every male among you consents to be circumcised, then we will give our daughters to you, again in marriage, and we will take your daughters for ourselves, and we will live with you and become one people. But if you do not listen to us and refuse to be circumcised, then we will take our daughter, Dinah, and go. So you see, she is still there with Shechem in that home. That's where she's at. She was being held there. She wasn't raped and then let to go home. She's there for however long this was taking place. She was there. So, for this portion, I put setting the trap using a well thought out plan. I've heard it said that if you're going to go to war, you need to make sure it's on your terms. And you need to make sure that you put your enemy in the most compromised position possible. What you want. Before I go any further, I want to be clear about this, and that's that both of these groups, both of them, are lying to one another. They're both of them. It's not, they're just liars. They're lying to each other right now. That's what's going on. Okay? They're not sincere in what they're saying. Okay? Both of them clearly have ulterior motives. And both of them are acting in a very dishonorable way. Both groups. Okay? The first thing we see in verse 14. The brothers say, look, there's only a couple of small things, guys, that are really keeping us from sealing this deal, from us moving on ahead. I just want to be clear with you what it is, okay? It's just a couple of small, minor details. First thing here is that this deal that Levi and Simeon were talking about, they never intended to fulfill it. Never. They were never going to agree to have their sister marry this guy and intermarry with him. That was never really a consideration. So, the sole purpose of the conversation was to put their enemy in a position of physical compromise and military vulnerability. That's what it was for. Here's what we need to do. Here's what you got to do. What we know. There's just this one little thing. It's like when you go to, buy a car or something, and like, okay, the numbers just aren't quite there. Maybe if we could just do. And you're like, okay, what can we do? Because you really want that car. That's what they're doing here. They know he really wants this little girl. So they're saying, look, if it's going to happen, we need this. We're almost there. Just a little bit more. First thing, guys, is you see, your men, they're uncircumcised. That's a problem for us. So intermarrying would be a shame, and it would bring shame and dishonor to our sister and to the rest of our women if they married your guys. You understand? And again, the statement was true, but their heart behind it was wrong. Yeah, they should not be intermarrying. And yeah, they were telling him this. But Levi and Simeon, they weren't saying, hey guys, you know what? Follow our God, become part of our people with us, and be one with us, and just become circumcised and become followers of Jehovah. That's not what they're saying at all. There's a problem. You guys aren't circumcised. And it made me think how, these are the good guys in the story, right? And I got to thinking, how many times do people today, and we'll just say churchgoers today, lie to non-Christians, telling them, you know what, we really want you to be part of our church. But it's not because they love them or even really care about their souls. But it's because they want something they have. And we'd love to have you in our church so we can all get along. It would be so cool to have somebody as famous as you, or as rich as you, or as powerful as you or as influential as you. You're almost there, man. Just come on in and be part of it. It'll go great. But we don't really care about their souls. Yeah, it'd be great having whoever here. But there's no real concern for the eternal destiny of their soul. As long as you're an asset to us, we'll take you. Second, they say, you know what? It would be unacceptable to our God if our women married you, if we gave Dinah to Shechem. Now, it's true. God never has, nor will he ever approve of a Christian and a non-Christian in marriage. He says no to that. It's clear over and over and over. In 2 Corinthians 6:14, in case we forget, it says, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what partnership can righteousness have with wickedness? Or what fellowship does light have with darkness? Again, 2 Corinthians 6:14. Again, this conversation they were having, it wasn't about making the unacceptable Canaanites acceptable to God. That is not what they were doing. That is not why they were having this conversation with them. It was about putting their enemy in a position of great, indefensible vulnerability. That's all they wanted. How can we get these guys in such a state where they will be unable to do anything to defend themselves against our attacks? They outnumber us. There's many more than us. What can we do to basically immobilize their entire army? How do we just take their men out of the equation? That's what they were looking at doing. So in verse 15, but we'll consent to you only on this condition, if you become like us, and in that every male among you consents and is circumcised. So he says, look, guys, let me be clear here. Uncircumcision, that's a deal breaker. But if all of your men, every one of them, become like us, circumcised, you have a deal. That's it. Just do this one thing, we're good. Remember, Shechem told him, name your price. Sky's the limit. Whatever you want. Nothing's too great to pay for that little girl over there. I'll do it. So Levi and Simeon said, yeah? Yes. He said, okay. Circumcision all the way around. That's what he did. That's what he told them. Huh. And then they go on again. Levi and Simeon, they continue with this story, with this lie, with this setup, and they say, and here's what this means. If you do that, if you meet this requirement that we're giving you, okay, if all of your men become circumcised, then we'll become part of you. We'll assimilate with you, with your ways. We'll become part of your people. It'll be great for everybody, right? Huh. Wow. Again, this was not their thought. This was not their plan. This was not they were never going to be part of the Canaanites. They were never going to be a part of the Hivite crew. They weren't. But they're lying. They're telling them just to get them to do what they want. Again, it reminds me of playing checkers with my grandkids. When you play with little ones that don't know how to play checkers, right? You set them up and you set them up and you set them up and they jump one of yours and they're like, oh, I got you. And they jump you again. Oh, I got you, right? And the next thing you know, there goes 6 jumps by you. Bam, 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 bam. King me. And they're like, what just happened? That's exactly what these guys are doing. They are setting them up royally. Hey, just do this and we'll be part of you. Right? Didn't they tell them at the beginning, you can be part of us in partnership with us and we got plenty of land for you and all these things. They're like, yeah, this would be great. Again, it wasn't their heart though. It wasn't their plan. And then in verse 17, he says, look, but if you do not do what we ask, we're going to take Dinah. And we're out of here. That's it. Do this or it's no deal. So Shechem, listen to what we're saying. Levi, Simeon, her older brothers. This is the last, final, and best offer. Circumcision, or you don't get her. What's it going to be? That's it. So they made it very clear to him and to his dad. Now, verses 18 and 19, it says, their words seemed reasonable to Hamor and his son Shechem. And the young man did not hesitate to do the required thing, for he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. Now he was more respected and honored than all others in the household of his father. I had a real hard time with those two verses. The reason that Shechem agreed is disgusting because it just further goes on to support the idea that he would do anything to be able to fulfill this perverse lust that he had for this little girl. Again, I was surprised how many conversations I had after last week about, but it says that he loved her. He didn't love her. He lusted after her. Yeah, but could it have been he raped her violently, painfully? The idea is that he even tortured her, and that was just part of the way they dealt with these people. That was their culture, and all the town was okay with this. So this is what's going on. But he says, hey, I want this, and this is, the words seem reasonable to Hamor and Shechem. Oh, that's what you want? He agreed to do this because his wicked obsession for this little innocent girl. That's it? Just cut some skin off? Okay, I can do that. That was his answer. He was fine with it. But here's what really turned my stomach. Listen, and the young man did not hesitate to do the required thing. For he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. Not a love, it was a lust. And then it says, now he was more respected and honored than all the others in the household of his father. That he was more respected than all of the other brothers or whatever in the house means that he was a leader amongst them. He was a man that the other men in the house followed. Okay? To say that he was more honored says that of all the other Hivite men, Shechem was the best one. He was the most honorable, the most moral, the most kind, he was just the best guy. He's the best they had. When they said, let me see your best guy, what it is to be a true man. Shechem, the child rapist. That's our best. This is who he was, and this is how they saw him amongst their people. In his family, at least, that's how they saw him. And then I had to ask myself, just how perverse does a family need to be for a child rapist to be called the best son in the family? But that is exactly who he was, and that's exactly what they were saying. He had no problem doing it. He figured, if I got to do this to make things right, then I can do that. To get what I want, I'll do that. In verses 20 through 22, Hamor and Shechem now give their sales pitch to the leaders of the city, and they say that Hamor and Shechem, his son, came to the gate of their city. This is where all the leaders would get together, and he spoke with the men of the city, and he said, these men, they're peaceful and they're friendly with us. So let them live in the land and do business in it. The land is large enough for them, not us. And let us take their daughters for wives, and let us give them our daughters in marriage. And then 22, but only on this condition will the men consent to our request that they live among us and become one people, that every male among us becomes circumcised, just as they are circumcised. So imagine all the men are there, they're at the gates, all the leaders, all the who's, all the wannabe somebodies are there, all the guys are there. And Shechem and Hamor show up and they go, guys, please, I need to speak with you. Serious proposition I have for you, gentlemen. These people here that came with Jacob, they're really easygoing, they're rich people, they're nice people, and look around. We've got plenty of territory, guys. Easily big enough for both of us to live on, but both of our tribes, our peoples. Come on. Let's have them become one people with us. What do you say? Let's bolster up our numbers. Let's be stronger this way. Let's bring them in. We'll marry their women, and they'll marry ours. And here's the deal. This is all they're asking for. Okay, I mean, to just almost, grow by a third or whatever it is. We're going to grow. Guys, here's all they're asking for us to do. Men, tomorrow we get circumcised. What do you say? So this is the sale pitch that he's giving. We're going to have this. You just got to do this. Okay. I think at this point, Shechem looks and he sees the eyes of the men. And some of those men are like, yeah, no. This wasn't a foreign practice. It was practiced by other religions and other peoples at this time. So they understood the process. And they're like, yeah, that doesn't sound real enticing. Shechem, thank you, but no, thank you. So what does he do? Read verse 23. He continues, he says, after he says, look, all you got to do is become circumcised, and they're one with us. And they're like, yeah, no. There's a question that a lot of difficult people like to ask, and that is, well, what's in it for me? Right? Because we're selfish at heart. So he answers that question, what's in it for me? And he says, guys, in verse 23, will not their cattle and their possessions and all their animals be ours? Again, if we do this, let us consent. Let's do what they're asking, and they will live here with us. 24, and every Canaanite man who went out of the city gate listened and considered what Hamor and Shechem said, and every male who was a resident of that city was circumcised. Wow. Huh. He sweetens the pot and he says, guys, all their stuff, and now we start to see the real heart of Shechem and Hamor. All of their stuff is eventually going to become ours if we do this. They're a rich people. Look at all of their, all their cattle and their, sheep and lambs and kids and tents. And they're rich, man. And if we intermarry with them, we're more than them. We'll just take it all in. It'll become ours. We marry into them and then we just take it away. We marry, we take it away. It's ours. So what he's telling them is, guys, don't look at it like, oh my gosh, circumcision. Think of it as, an investment in your future. You're going to be able to get all this stuff just for that. Come on. Who's with me, fellas? Who's with me? So they're listening. But I don't know if I could say admire this what it seems like, but Shechem must have been a really charismatic speaker. He brings this up, guys, here's what I want you to do. But wait, if you do this one little thing, you're going to get so rich. You're going to become just so overwhelmed with such good stuff. Come on. So they hear this and they believe him. And it says every guy that was there went out and did it. Hey, we think, how could people be so deceived? I've watched, and have you seen speeches of Hitler? Super charismatic, demonically all the way, demonic. But he was, and the people were like, yeah, just screaming and yelling in support. Hey guys, come on, look. And it just builds it up and builds it up and builds it up and builds it up. I've been to, when I was writing a paper on false teachers, I went to a Benny Hinn conference in Sacramento. And I saw how they built everybody up, how they built him up with the music and with the stories. And everything was just so. And I have just, that's this guy. Guys. And wait. And it could be. And they're like, I want, 50 extra sheep. Oh, yeah, and I saw, and they have silk, and oh, man, yeah, and in no time, we'll take them over, and their greed and everything just keeps going. So they give in to this, and every man gets circumcised. All right. Verse 25 down. Now on the third day after the circumcision, when all the men were terribly sore and in pain, two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and boldly entered the city. And they killed every male. And they killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the edge of the sword and took Dinah out of Shechem's house. That's where she was at. And they left. 27, then Jacob's other sons came upon those who were killed, and they looted the town because their sister had been defiled and disgraced. They took the Canaanites' flocks and their herds and their donkeys and whatever was in the city and in the field. They looted all their wealth, and they took captive all their children and their wives and everything that was in the houses. Stop right there and we'll cover these last two right now. So phase 2 of the plan. So 3 days, they figured this out. I figured these two brothers were sitting going, how's this going to work? What would just get them to be like they would never move? They felt like they were dead. They wish that they were dead. They were in so much pain. Oh, bro, you know what would work? Let's get them to be circumcised. Remember when people came and they became part of us and they were men and, dude, they were in so much pain. When was it worst? Probably like day 3 or 4. Yeah. Okay. Then, so there's this plan somehow being worked up, and they did this, and now they get all the men, all their soldiers, all their warriors, all their wise men, and all of them now, day 3, it says they were in terrible pain. They did not have the knives that we have today, the scalpels, right? They were not going to do, this is surgery, folks. So they were just using whatever they had, flint or whatever it was, to cut away at the skin in a very sensitive area. So the healing process must have been brutal. And they're down. Day 3, in pain, not wanting to move, right? Nothing, just leave me alone. That's where they're at right now. That is where they are. So 3 days after all of them were circumcised, at the height of their pain and their vulnerability, Dinah's brothers, their full brothers from the same mom, Levi and Simeon, they walked in with their swords, and they immediately began to mercilessly butcher every single man in the city. That's what they do. And I looked at this different commentaries, and the word that they keep using is killed, not murdered. And there's a difference. You murder somebody who's innocent, you kill somebody who's guilty or in combat or something like that. So they killed them. But what I found interesting too was their attitude. When they walked in, and it describes how they walked in. It says they walked in confidently, and everybody's like, hey, Levi, Simeon, how you doing? We're cool, man. They walked in, got their big old blades strapped on. Hey, guys. Hey. They're walking in, they're doing their thing. And there was a confidence that they had, or there was an assurance that they had. And I think it's because, one, everybody there thought they were friends. The plan was working great. But also, I believe they knew that they were doing the will of God and bringing His judgment to what happened. So they were just walking in. Hey, hi, hello, hey. And there it goes. They weren't afraid. They knew what they were doing. They believed what they were doing was right. So they're carrying out this judgment. And just so that there's no doubt, it tells us, it makes a special note of the fact that Prince Hamor and Shechem, the child rapist's son, they were both also killed. Right? But think about this. All the other men were also killed. Okay? It's not believed the children were killed because they were carried off with the moms we see later when they were taken captive. But all the men were also killed. I'll speak to that right now. And once they did that, they freed their little sister that was in Shechem's house. I can only imagine that meeting. You know, you watch those stories where somebody was held captive or kidnapped and taken away, and, you know, law enforcement shows up and they kick open the door and they get, oh, no, it's okay. We got you. We're here. We love you. And there's this great reunion, right? And then commercial, right? So, but here, that's what happens. They go, come on, little sister, come on. We got you. But there's so many. Don't worry. We got them. Come on. They grab this little girl and they leave with her now. And then in verses 27 through 30, somewhere in there, the other 9 brothers show up. And they find all these dead guys. Everybody's dead. They're like, huh, all right, let's take their stuff. They looted the place. They took everything, right? So, again, remember what they were going to do, what their plans were to do with Jacob's people? Well, all their stuff will eventually become ours. So what happens? God says, no, all your stuff is now theirs. They looted it all, took it all. And why did they do this? Because of what they did to Dinah. It was judgment. Some people say, oh, it's revenge. I believe God was defending her the same way he defended, the other matriarchs throughout Scripture, where they were going to take a wife, and here, let me give you my wife, and oh, it's your sister, and well, you almost slept with her, and God protected her. I think here God is saying, no. What you did to my little girl is not okay. And I believe God's carrying out judgment against that. And now in verse 27, it says, then Jacob's brothers' sons, they came upon those who were killed and looted in town because their sisters had been defiled and disgraced. Because, again, that word killed is used. Because of what was going on, the idea that's kind of brought up here is that the whole city was actually in support of the disgraceful and defiling actions that were taken upon innocent Dinah by Shechem. This is the way we do things in our city. Fine. You find yourself a nice young one. Good for you, Shechem. Man, that's all right. That was their culture. And I think of this, and I can't help but at least see how it could, in some ways, reflect what's going on with what we're seeing going on in some of our schools. We got drag queens reading stories to kids. I'm sorry, you're a pervert with some serious mental issues, and you do not belong reading to our kids. And we should not be dressing up our little boys like little girls so that old men, perverts, can watch them dance and shove money in their shorts. That's happening, folks. I read an article or a post. Christopher Yoon, I believe his name is, and a wonderful speaker, man of God. And he says that this just happened recently in a hospital, that a young child went in, 10 years old, with a broken leg. And they asked the parents to leave the room. And then the medical provider allegedly, again, there's a lot more I have to look into this, but the guy's a great resource. The medical professional allegedly asked this child, so do you feel like you're a girl? How is that even okay? I understand they ask in the hospital if you've been abused, if you're in a dangerous situation, but to ask, excuse me, little boy, but do you feel like you're a girl? This is not okay, but that's society now. Those are things that are becoming acceptable now. And we need to stand up and say something. If you and I don't speak out against the godlessness around us, God will not hold us guiltless. Talks about the watchman on the wall in Scripture, right? If he sends out the sound and everybody's warned, then it's on them. Their blood's on their heads. But if I, as the watchman, refuse to give the signal, or it's unclear and they don't know what to do, then I am going to be held accountable for what goes on. The time has come for us to stop being so nice and start being who we're called to be, and that's Christians. Warriors, lights in the dark. We don't have to be rude. We don't have to be, like the world. But we have to be like Christ and speak up for those things and speak out against those things that are wrong. We have to speak up. That this town, these people, because they saw what Shechem did, supported what he was doing, again, because they ignored it or maybe even supported the godlessness, divine judgment fell on them also. It wasn't just Shechem and Hamor that suffered the consequences of it. It was a society around them that said, yeah, that's okay. I don't need to get involved in that. They should have. Somebody should have said something. And I pray to God that we don't become like that. That's their business, not mine. The moment you start bringing that trash, that perversion, that filth, that sin into an area that affects my family, it is my business. It's your business. We need to be saying something. Verse 30, 31. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, get the dad, man. He says, you guys, you've ruined me, making me a stench to the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. My men are few in number, and the men of the land will band together against me and attack me. I shall be destroyed, and my household. Not just me, guys, you too. That's what he's saying. But they said, should he be permitted to treat our sister as a prostitute? Dad, is this really okay? Should we let this go, Dad? Jacob tells his boys, he says, guys, the idea is you have no idea the problems you just brought on our household. I get what you did. I understand why you did it, but you have no idea of the repercussions. These Canaanites, there's some mean folks. Perizzites, they're bad. They're going to come after us. They're not going to let this go. It's not just, oh, well, I understand. No. And it's not just me they're going to come after. You understand that, right? You guys, they're going to come after you too. So I hope you took this into account. I don't know if you forgot, guys, but compared to them, we're small in number. They're huge. They're going to kill us for this. Okay? I love these sons, these boys. I love what they say. Hey, Dad, should we have let him treat her like a prostitute, Dad? Should we? Is that okay? Did they treat our sister like that? Should we have just let it go? I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but you're doing something that's wrong, or you're compromised in some area, great or small. And God uses someone younger than you to put you in check with a simple question like, well, is that how a Christian's supposed to respond? Did you pray about that? Are those the words that we should be using? Is it right? And you're like, oh. So they ask, Dad, is it okay that they treat our sister like that? I believe the biblical principle and the penalty for crimes like human trafficking, rape, pedophilia, I believe they should be severe. I do. And just so that we're clear about something again, is that man did not invent capital punishment. God did. We're told if somebody does this, their life should be taken. Clearly, it says it in Scripture. So when I say that it should be dealt with severely, I mean capital punishment. What I'm talking about. And I know some people are going to feel that I'm not being very loving. Okay? What I'm going to ask you or of you is that you don't hear what I'm not saying. Okay? Do not hear what I am not saying. I am not saying that people who commit these heinous crimes, these acts, are beyond redemption or salvation. I am not saying that. I am not saying that one bit. I believe that Jesus died to save all men, no matter how deep in sin and perversion they may be. But what I am saying is that there are consequences to these actions. Okay? And while God may, can, and does forgive and deliver a person's soul from hell, justice still needs to be served on this side of eternity. There's certain things that they can't escape from. We're seeing what happens right now because there's no consequences to these actions by our children, who then become teenagers, who do even worse things and are given a slap on the wrist, if that, or just a dirty look and told, you know better than that. Then they become adults and they commit these crimes. And before the day is done, they're out of jail for what they did. And they figure there's no consequences to anything that I do. Parents need to just start parenting again and quit being friends. We need to let people know there's consequences for these actions, that God has rules in place for a reason. Do I believe it's going to happen? I believe the Christians will do it, but I believe the world is not going to do it. And I believe it's only going to get worse. But again, it's getting the way it is because there are no consequences to these things. 20 years ago, to have a boy come to school dressed like a girl and you getting in trouble because you went, why are you doing that? Wouldn't have happened. They would have sent him to get some kind of evaluation because there's some kind of a psychological disorder. But not anymore. Now you're the one that's wrong or bad. That should not be. You speak the truth and you speak it boldly, and you shouldn't be afraid of what happens. They're going to fire me. Okay, then they fire me. People are going to hate you. Let them hate you. You stand for the truth. I'm telling you what I'm telling you because I love you. I want you to be happy on your way to hell in your sin. We need to be praying for our kids and for all the threats that are out there. We need to be praying for the parents, the young parents and the grandparents and the great-grandparents. Because it's in case you've missed it, we are in an all-out war for the souls of our children. And the enemy is pulling no punches anymore. He's blatantly standing right in our face and daring us to do or say something. It's time. And we say, no, this is not okay. We're not going to stand for this anymore. I am so far off my notes now. My prayer is that we start seeing more homeschooling. Yeah. Yeah. More people committed and dedicated to bringing up their children in the ways of God. I've been reaching out to a couple of different groups that do that. If anyone's interested, let me know. And I say that because it's our kids, it's their souls. Can't think of the pastor who was it that said it. He says, but you can't get upset when you send your kids to Rome and they come back worshiping Caesar. We need to bring them up in the ways of the Lord. When anybody tries to twist their beliefs and the truth, we need to get up right in their face and tell them, stay away from my kids. But get ready for a fight, because they are not going to let go of them easily. I'm going to stop there. Let's pray.